For reaction to the U.S.-Ukraine agreement, I spoke to Congressman Gabe Amo, a Democrat from Rhode Island who serves on the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. Congressman, I want to start with the new security pact announced by the U.S. and Ukraine that's supposed to show the U.S.'s long-term influence and also interest in Ukraine. What do you make of this agreement?
Well, look, I think this is exactly the type of commitment that the United States is demonstrating in what we have done in standing with Ukraine for democracy. Not only the short term of democracy and the immediacy of combating Russia and Putin's aggression, but the long term, making sure that Ukraine is able to have a vibrant economy that sustains itself while, being in a region proximate to a foe who is violating a rule of law and focused on their destruction.
It does, of course, also include security. We know that Ukraine wants to join NATO, so why is this bilateral pact needed? Couldn't it just also open the way for NATO membership?
Well, look, we know the conversation about Ukraine becoming a member of NATO is one that will take some time. Certainly, as that process unfolds, we cannot wait a moment for the United States to stand alongside its partners in Europe to make sure that Ukraine is fortified in the near term while we let the broader processes take place.
If you look at what the Security Pact says, the agreement says that in the event of an armed attack against Ukraine, the U.S. and Ukraine will meet within 24 hours to discuss a response. It doesn't commit to sending U.S. forces in. But if you look at what's been done so far, you mentioned U.S. support for Ukraine until now. It's been more than $175 billion. What else would be left? I mean, is this essentially a mutual defense pact where we could see U.S. troops?
I think we know fundamentally that the U.S. stands firmly with Ukraine because we have common cause in fighting for democracy, fighting for the maintenance of the post-World War II international order. And so, I would stay extremely focused on what the United States has committed to in this pact as a commitment to Ukraine, to its people, and the shared fight we have for democracy.
This G7 summit we're seeing comes off the back of very important EU elections where we saw in big countries like France and Germany, far-right parties make significant gains. And these are parties that have been skeptical, to say the least, of sending aid to Ukraine. Do you think that this changes the equation for the U.S.?
I think we are experiencing a lot of volatility in the global theater. Certainly, as we've seen recent electoral successes of movements that haven't necessarily been supportive, that may cause us to question. But I think when we appeal to values, when we appeal to what we are aligned on, which is the preservation of the democratic values and norms with which we share across the world, certainly in Europe, I know that I have no cause for concern. We just have to reiterate, recommit, and refocus our efforts on sharing with the people in our countries the values that we're putting forward and why these conflicts belong to our broader fight for democracy.
Yeah. That is a message that we continue to hear from President Biden. At the same time, the G7 has agreed to use frozen Russian assets to raise around $50 billion for Ukraine. Do you think that is, at the same time, an acknowledgement, if you will, that political will and funds for Ukraine might be drying up? We knew how long it took, of course, for Congress to pass an aid package here in the U.S.
Well, look, I think it's a measure of acknowledgement that we should leave no tools unused, everything at our disposal to make sure that the unchecked power of Vladimir Putin goes checked. Obviously, it took longer than we would have wanted in the context of the United States, but we got there. And so I would reaffirm our commitments to this fight, that Europe is committed to this fight, and we'll use every tool available to make sure we have the resources necessary.